Well, I'm sorry we're not in the suit. Just got back from a run and we had breaking news. And when I say breaking news, I mean breaking news. We already knew that Davante Adams was traded for the Jets. I was going to wait until tonight to talk about this in the live stream. Of course, I'll still be streaming tonight answering all the questions. But Amari Cooper also just got dealt to the Buffalo Bills. We can go ahead and look at the trade details. We are going to update rankings. We got a lot to dive into. But first, we'll talk about the Amari deal. Here, it makes a ton of sense for the Cleveland Browns to look to move Amari. The Browns have absolutely no shot whatsoever to do anything. And at the same time, we know the Bills need a wide receiver. I mean, we've seen that with the play of Josh Allen so far this season. Now, the updated trade fallout here is going to be the Browns get a 2025 third round pick and a 2026 seventh round pick. And the Bills are going to be getting Amari and a 2025 sixth round pick. So effectively, Amari Cooper is traded for a third round pick here to the Buffalo Bills. Freaking massive with the impact that you are going to have for Amari Cooper, because we can go ahead and we can pull this up. But so far this year, Amari Cooper has actually been near the very top of the NFL in total target volume. The issue that you've had with Amari Cooper is just the quarterback play with Deshaun Watson has been some of the worst in the entire league. So we can go ahead and look at this. And you know what freaking sucks is, obviously been following the Flock League channel. You'll see the video that dropped today. And you know that Sal Vetri actually in the Flock League just traded for Amari Cooper. Well, guess who I get to play this next week, ladies and gentlemen? Week 7, I get to play Sal. Now, Sal's team name was Cooked. Your boy is about to be cooked because he has Amari Cooper, who is a Bill. Freaking brutal. If y'all remember, I freaking traded away Amari Cooper at the beginning of the year when we saw how inefficient you were going to see the play from Deshaun Watson. But looking at Amari Cooper so far this season, this is a player that has had 9 targets, 8 targets, 12 targets, 8 targets, 10 targets, and 6 targets. So he has still shown the ability to drive a really high market share number in his offense. Now, the issue has been Deshaun Watson can't hit the ocean if he's standing in a boat trying to throw a rock. I mean, going through and looking at the NFL target leaders, I would expect that Garrett Wilson is maybe at the very top of this list. But beyond that, I don't know how far down Amari Cooper will be. So going over, it looks like this has been updated to week 6, I believe. Yeah, we're going to assume that it has. But the only receivers that have had more targets than Amari Cooper this year have been Chris Godwin, DK Metcalf, Drake London, CeeDee Lamb, Deontay Johnson, Wan'Dale Robinson, and Garrett Wilson. Now, of course, Amari Cooper has been an absolute bum in fantasy football, primarily and only really because of Deshaun Watson, where Amari Cooper has given you one game all year with more than 10 fantasy points. Literally one game all season with more than 10 points. Now, we had still been ranking Amari in our rest of season rankings as somebody that you kind of have to respect here just because of that target volume. But now I think that we can actually move him up dramatically. So going through and looking at where Amari Cooper was in the rankings, he was at wide receiver 32. I would rather have Amari over Zay Flowers, knowing that the Baltimore Ravens just want to run the ball over and over and over again. I'd rather have him over Ayuk. I'd rather have him over Dell. I'd rather have him over Olave. I'd rather have him over Waddle. I'd rather have him over Terry. I'd actually think there's going to be more passing volume going into the future in Buffalo than there will be in Washington. Obviously, we're going to have to update this ranking with Davante Adams as well. I'd rather have Amari over Deontay Johnson. I think Amari Cooper slides right around a top 24 wide receiver, where previous to this, he just simply was not startable. Now, going over and looking at what we have with the other wide receivers in Buffalo, we had Keon Coleman around wide receiver 49. I actually think at this point, yeah, I would rather have Juju Smith-Schuster over him. We had Shakir at wide receiver 52. I'd rather have Romeo Doubs. I'd probably rather have Calvin Ridley. If the NFL's in a trading frenzy right now, I wouldn't be surprised if DeAndre Hopkins ends up getting dealt. Amari is very clearly the wide receiver 1. And I actually think the quiet loser of this is actually going to be Dalton Kincaid. Now, we already moved Kincaid behind Evan Ingram, so I don't know if we're going to be moving Dalton Kincaid much further than this. But if you had not moved Dalton Kincaid behind Evan Ingram and Jake Ferguson just yet, I think this is your sign that you probably need to go ahead and do so. And then going over to our rest of season quarterback rankings, these are for 4-point passing touchdown leagues, so the rushing upside is going to be highly incentivized. We have Josh Allen behind Lamar, Hurts, and Daniels. While I do think that this helps Josh Allen, I'm not going to be ready to move him ahead of any of these quarterbacks just yet. So I think it is a tough spot. Now, Chai1 says Amari or Higgins rest of season. I mean, I would love to hear what your thought process is down in the live chat with this. We can go right back to where we updated our ranking with Amari Cooper. And I think this is a good question. I mean, we have Amari Cooper and T. Higgins right in the same range, wide receiver 22, 23, and 24. I do want to reiterate, like we said, through 6 weeks, Amari Cooper only has one game with more than 10.0 fantasy points in a full PPR format. So he definitely goes from being not startable in fantasy to all of a sudden somebody that I'm starting at wide receiver 2 or the flex spot every single week. But we can say the same thing about T. Higgins here as well. So I don't know. It is a very flat tier. I would love to hear what y'all have to say about Amari or Higgins. And I don't know if we can say that Amari is a top 10 season incoming. I don't think that we can go that far. And we have CJ says, do you think that Adams trades affects Breece Hall? Well, we can pivot over to the Davante Adams trade right now. But actually, let me update these rankings. And obviously, whenever we update the rankings, actually, that impacts the power rankings on flockfantasy.com. So if you've linked your team with this, by the way, if you have not linked your team with flockfantasy.com yet, make sure you do it. It's completely free. You can only do it if you play on Sleeper, ESPN, or Yahoo, but I think the majority of y'all are. But I would highly recommend going through and linking your team. That way you can see the up-to-date power rankings with your league. And at the same time, you actually get to see the best options that are available to you on the waiver wire every single week. It's a much better way to view it in comparison to what Sleeper, ESPN, and Yahoo gives you. So these are going to be like the average ranks if you're looking at the expert values. But I actually just updated my rankings post Amari Cooper trade. I may be the only person who's done this so far on the site. So I actually want to look at the updated power rankings. And you can see with the Amari Cooper trade, based off my updated rankings, Sal does move ahead of us in the power standings in the Flock League, which is a little bit upsetting. But regardless, yeah, make sure you can find the link in the comment section in the description if you want to take advantage of this tool for completely free. You actually can go ahead and look at average rest of season expert ranks on the site for completely free as well. Now, if you wanted to look at my rankings, if you're a paid member of the site, just go over and hit the sort by. And then from there, you can go ahead and hit Mason Dodd. Then it sorts by my rest of season ranks. And then also, if you wanted to see like, oh, okay, what's Amari Cooper being traded for right now in real fantasy football leagues, you can go over to the trade finder for completely free. You can type in Amari Cooper, and then you could see exactly what he is getting dealt for across all league formats. Say you want to go, okay, I only want to look at one quarterback leagues, only full PPR leagues, and only 12 team formats as well. We'll actually filter all that down for you too. So make sure you take advantage of the free tools that we have for you on the site. But let me get back to updating my rankings on the site, because the other trade that we are going to have to go through real quick is actually going to be the Davante Adams deal. What actually sucks is I recorded a video at like 1 a.m. last night of our buy low candidates that's going to drop any second now. And I included Davante Adams as a buy low candidate, looking at the timeline of this hamstring injury, looking at the fact that I thought Adams was going to finally get dealt this week. And yeah, it does happen. You haven't had Adams for the past 3 weeks, but we talked about in that video, which we'll probably cut the segment out because obviously it's old news at this point. But Davante Adams through the first 3 weeks this year, very similar to Amari Cooper, was a target hog. Davante Adams had been averaging 9 targets a game through the first 3 weeks so far this season. And now, all of a sudden, the efficiency should dramatically go up for Davante Adams playing with Aaron Rodgers. Now, obviously, this is not a situation in which only Davante Adams moves up rankings. This is also a situation which negatively impacts what you're going to be getting with Garrett Wilson. To go through and look at what you have right now. Oh my gosh, I didn't even see Russ going to start. I guess we were running a little too long. But anyway, let me see if we can have the details. Davante Adams gets traded for a conditional 3rd round pick. So here, kind of the same price that you have with the Amari Cooper trade. But to go through and figure out where I'm going to be putting these guys in my rest of season ranks, Garrett Wilson for sure needs to fall behind Drake London, Cooper Kupp, Chris Godwin, Marvin Harrison, Deebo Samuel, Mike Evans, Devonta Smith, Stephon Diggs. I think Garrett Wilson falls from being easily a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy now to being a mid wide receiver too. And honestly, I think we have to give credit for Davante Adams, who has been that target hog option, to come up here and at least be right next to Garrett Wilson. I would love to hear what y'all have to say in the live chat regarding Garrett Wilson versus Davante Adams. Obviously, this is an instant reaction right here. We are going to dive deeper into this, and we will keep tinkering with these rankings as the week goes on. But what's funny is last night in the live stream, I actually finally threw in the towel, and I finally said, okay, I'm willing to put Allen Lazard up as somebody that is a flex consideration every single week. Well, F that. Allen Lazard now goes right back to somebody that I would straight up drop. I don't think he's worth the roster spot. We get the news that Mike Williams is probably going to get dealt. You didn't have Mike Williams on your team anyway. Don't pick up Mike Williams. If you had Lazard, I'd probably go ahead and drop Allen Lazard. And I forgot, we actually need to move Jerry Jeudy up these rankings as well. Now, Jeudy being the wide receiver one here in Cleveland, I think Jerry Jeudy's a better receiver than Jacoby Myers, and the offense isn't that much worse. I think the offense is maybe a little bit better than what you have in Denver. I think Jeudy's a better receiver than Sutton. I would rather have Jeudy than Shakir. I'd rather have him over Ridley. I'd rather have him over Dobbs, Tolbert, Keon's about where things get tough. I'd probably put Jerry Jeudy up here closer to flex consideration in the range of Juju Smith-Schuster, Wan'Dale Robinson, and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, going over to what we have with Garrett Wilson versus Davante Adams. This is a spot in which I think both wide receivers are guys that you're going to be starting every single week going into the future. Now, of course, I want to give the credit for Davante Adams to have averaged 9 targets a game through the first 3 weeks. I'm going to assume that Davante Adams is fully healthy at this point if this trade is going down. And honestly, I think maybe the hamstring injury wasn't real in the first place. And while I want to give all the credit in the world to Davante Adams having 9 targets a game, if you go back over and you look at the receivers in the NFL currently leading in targets, Garrett Wilson has 67 targets through 6 games. 67 targets through 6 games. So honestly, at this point, I think that this is a spot in which it's hard to rank Davante Adams immediately ahead of Wilson. And let me just get out a little calculator real quick and make sure that Fantasy Pros is, they're including week 6. Garrett Wilson is the young ascending wide receiver where Davante Adams is the older option. Davante Adams is 31 years old. Obviously, Adams has the long track record with Aaron Rodgers. I think this makes Aaron Rodgers a viable flex play as well because, not flex play, viable streamer as well if you have a plus matchup, where last night I thought that he wasn't. But if you look at what you've had from Rodgers over the past few weeks, you've seen a significant amount of passing attempts each game, where you're looking at 35, 42, 54, and 35. Against the Bills, we had more pre-snap motion. Against the Bills, we also had more play action. So this does look to be a more dynamic offense overall. I think the addition of Davante Adams makes Aaron Rodgers more exciting. We can go over and we can look at my rest of season ranks here at quarterback. Rodgers goes from somebody that had 0 rushing upside and just I didn't really have any interest with on the waiver wire. Now to I think he's about in the range of Sam Darnold and Geno Smith weekly, where these are guys that probably aren't guaranteed roster spots. However, if they have a plus matchup, you can go ahead and start them. And obviously, if it's a 6-point passing touchdown format, you bump these guys up even more. The issue is in a 4-point passing touchdown league, they just simply are not going to have the rushing upside. And then in terms of this trade possibly impacting Breece Hall, so you can look at it a couple different ways. We had Breece Hall as RB4 in our rest of season rankings before the deal. You can look at it and say, well, Davante Adams coming over is going to mean more first downs. It's going to mean more trips to the red zone. It's going to be a better offense overall, and that should help Breece Hall. You can look at it on the other end and go, okay, well, we know Davante Adams historically in Green Bay was with Aaron Rodgers, was actually a phenomenal red zone option, and you consistently had this Packers and now this Jets offense, presumably, looking to actually throw the ball and use Davante Adams at the goal line. So potentially this makes it a better offense with more trips to the red zone, while at the same time, potentially it actually drives down the usage of this rushing attack at the goal line. So in terms of how this impacts Breece, to be honest with you, I don't really know. I think if you're playing in a full PPR format, you could make the argument to go with Alvin Kamara ahead of Breece Hall at this point. The reason that I am not going to be doing so is you have the Derek Carr injury. So even if we want to assume that this actually improves the Jets offense, but it hurts the goal line usage. In terms of the New Orleans Saints, the Derek Carr injury really crushes the Saints offense. I think Kamara probably gets used a little bit more in the red zone. I just don't know if they have as many red zone opportunities. So Breece, if it does impact him, it moves him from RB4 to RB5 for me. But in reality, I'm probably not going to overreact. I'm probably not going to be updating this ranking with an instant reaction. Obviously, we can revisit this in the live stream later tonight. But I'll definitely be live streaming later tonight, answering all your fantasy football questions as well. Got to shower, got to eat, and make some videos for tomorrow, and then we will be live again. But we are about 2 likes away from hitting 200 likes in the stream. Hit that like button if you have not done so already. And of course, if you wanted to check out the rankings for free, if you wanted to go through and look at that free trade calculator, the free trade finder, where you want to say, oh, okay, what is Davante Adams now getting traded for today? You can look at these real trades that have happened today in real fantasy football leagues that involve Davante Adams if you want to get a real sense of what Davante Adams is getting traded for in fantasy football after this deal. This is for completely free over there on flockfantasy.com. And also what's free on flockfantasy.com that I would highly recommend you taking advantage of if you play on Sleeper, ESPN, or Yahoo. You can go ahead and add your fantasy football league. You can look at the updated power rankings. You can select the creator of the rankings that you want to be using. And you can see actually Thomas jumps ahead of me in the power rankings as well because he has Davante Adams. And obviously Adams just went up, which kind of sucks. But nonetheless, you can also use this to determine the best players available to you on the waiver wire. You can sort by positions, which honestly, this should be a lot more useful for you than going through and trying to make your waiver wire plans on the actual Sleeper, ESPN, or Yahoo apps, because the way that they order those guys kind of just seems random at times with the projections that they have. So I'll leave a link to this in the description as well as the comment section. It's completely free for you to do all this. Full transparency, the only thing that's going to be behind a paywall is if you wanted to select like my values or if you want to select any of the individual values, but the expert values is going to be the average of everybody that you are looking at here. And that should be free for you as well as those waiver wire options. So I highly recommend you taking advantage of that. I'll let this sink in a little bit more, probably play around with the rankings a little more, and then we'll answer all your questions on the site tonight. But much love, and I really hope I get to see you out in the live stream later today.